All right. Welcome and thanks for joining us. My name is Irene Moore Davis. I'm the assistant curator at the Amherstburg Freedom Museum, and I'm joined today by the amazing Sharri, Rolland, Phillips, and Carlos Anthony. Both of these talented individuals will be introduced shortly. So, here at the Amherstburg Freedom Museum, we have always been very interested in arts-based knowledge mobilization. It's one of the reasons why this place 50 years ago was established as a museum and cultural center. And if you walk through the main building of our complex between now and the end of March, you'll have a chance to see the Artists of Color exhibit, The Never Ending Quest for Inclusion, which is a really interesting combination of historical artifacts from our permanent collection alongside artistic interpretations of those historical events, people, and themes created by the Artists of Color, which is a network of talented local Black artists, of whom many are Underground Railroad descendants. Their beautiful and evocative pieces comment on local and regional Black history in really thought-provoking ways. Drama is another important platform for knowledge mobilization to encourage learning, reflection, and conversations, and even action, calls to action based on our shared history. So both of our guests today have taken on the very challenging task of sharing their historical research with the public in the form of drama. First, let me introduce Sharri Rolland Phillips, a lifelong Michigan resident who, like me, is a descendant of the historic Black community at North Buxton, Ontario. Sharri has had a marvelous life growing up on a dairy farm in Lapeer, Michigan, touring as a soprano soloist, including a European concert tour, and becoming a successful pageant competitor, even being crowned Miss Michigan State Fair. That's my favorite part of the bio. But she also earned a Bachelor of Arts in Economics from Oakland University, a Juris Doctor degree from the Detroit College of Law, and served in various positions of responsibility in General Motors before opening up her own law firm. Today, she volunteers in many capacities, including with the Buxton Homecoming Committee, and she's an avid genealogist. Her original stage play, An Evening with Shelton Brooks, premiered earlier in February 2025 at the Chatham-Kent Kiwanis Theater. Numerous fellow Buxton descendants have been involved in that production, and the proceeds have benefited the museum there. And Carlos Anthony is a curator, screenwriter, novelist, filmmaker, producer, director, entrepreneur, and now a playwright. He is the author of the Global Student Reading List and its national bestseller. That's a tongue twister. Shades of Black and its sequel. And his work explores themes of Black masculinity, fatherhood, and the complex intersections of race and identity. Carlos' storytelling spans mediums from novels and short films to theater, and his debut play is premiering this week. He's also the co-founder of Millennial X, a program that amplifies BIPOC voices through various artistic disciplines, and he lives in Windsor, Ontario with his family. So we're just thrilled that The Price of Freedom, Carlos' very first original play, is premiering later this week at the Capitol Theater in Windsor, and that is a collaboration between Arts Collective Theater and Amherstburg Freedom Museum. So that's all that I have to say. Welcome, Sharri and Carlos.
Hi, Irene.
So
Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Our pleasure, absolutely. So we'll start with you, Sharri. Shelton Brooks is a fascinating historical figure. He's someone that we hold very dear here in Amherstburg, and he has ties to both Amherstburg and North Buxton. Here at the museum, we actually host an annual event that's inspired by him, Ribs and Ragtime, every February. So how did you first hear about Shelton Brooks?
And I actually don't recall how I first heard about him. I'm a sixth generation descendant of the Elgin settlement in Buxton. And just through osmosis, I was aware that there were several famous people that came from Buxton in different capacities. Some were entertainers, some were doctors, some were politicians. A lot of very important people, impactful people came from Buxton. So when it came time to do some writing, I was just in my entertainer mode and music mode and decided to focus in on Shelton Brooks because he is very unique and very broad in his skills. So I focused in on that person as my subject.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about Shelton Brooks. Who was he?
Okay, so Shelton Brooks was the son of a preacher man, and the minister, his father was Reverend Peter Brooks, and he served both at the church in Amherstburg and in North Buxton. It's known as the community church today. But these people are several generations back. So Shelton was born in like 1886. So his father must have been in the 1860s, born in the 1860s. Now, Shelton's father moved the family around a lot. So even though Shelton was born in Amherstburg, they probably moved to a couple of places, Toronto and St. Catharines, before coming to North Buxton, and rather quickly, because we believe that Shelton Brooks spent a lot of his formative years in Buxton. So from a young child into teenage years in Buxton.
Cool. And so, why is he famous or why is he remarkable?
Okay, so he became, I don't even know if he ever learned how to read music, but he became a famous jazz artist, composer. He branched off into the vaudeville genre. He then, got into film. And he was a comedian. He had so many skills, and it was honed in his vaudeville years, because the vaudeville performers generally had to have a lot of different skills: dancing, joke telling, music, play instrument. And he seemed to have all those skills.
Yeah, he did it all. An amazing life. So, Carlos, how did you first get involved in your project and how did you hear about John Anderson?
Man, so I was reached so Moya McAllister and Chris Rabideau, they had reached out to me on Facebook, which is interesting because I'm not like a social media person. So they reached out to me. They actually were referred to me by Hugh Irene. So thank you for that opportunity. And they asked me if I was interested in writing a theater play. And when they reached out, I was very insecure because I've only written for the screen, small screen and the big screen, as well as like novels. So at first I was like, let me see if I can find somebody to support you guys with this, because I just didn't feel worthy. And then they invited me out to the Amherstburg Freedom Museum for my first tour at the museum. And while I was there, at the end of the tour, there was this video that I was watching from the Amherstburg Freedom Museum. And there was a little clip about like John Anderson. And what stuck out to me was he was a Black man who he had murdered someone in self-defense. And he went on to like change our laws and our relationships with the Americans and how the British governed us. And I was like, why haven't we been told this story? When I was in high school and when I was in elementary school, a lot of the stories that I was being told were very triggering and traumatic. And, being, one of few Black people in my elementary school, the other like white children would look at me as if I was an enslaved person. And it just made me feel very uncomfortable and ashamed. So when I found out about like his story and, his resilience and just how he was able to kind of like persevere, I was like, I need to tell this story. And then when I found out about him being part of the Masons, and I started doing some more research and learning more about him, I was like, why aren't stories of the Underground Railroad told like a spy thriller, considering everything that they've done to like hide people and messages? Because everything with any of the world wars, they're all told like spy thrillers. So I wanted to be, I don't know if there's any other people that have done it, but I wanted to be the first that I know of to go ahead and do that. And hopefully it inspires more people to tell more stories like this.
Awesome. So, both Shari and Carlos, you've had to engage in a lot of research to get the stories right. Shari, what can you say to us about the process of researching Shelton Brooks in preparation for writing this play?
Well, first of all, um, his life the details of his life were pretty obscure. So had there not been a little bit of writing in Buxton, I was able to locate a book written by Vivian Robbins. It's called Musical Buxton, and it talks about all the people that became famous in the entertainment field, and Shelton being one of the more prominent ones. I wouldn't have a lot of detail on the start of it, because state documents only tell you so much. They tell you where the person lived at the time that that document was cited or written up, but you know, they don't give you the details behind what's going on in their life. So, and he was one of those people, there's just not much there. So I went on a journey to find everyone that he touched or that touched him, and to see what they said about him. And because he did have international fame, there were some other people that commented on him in their autobiographies or in the newspaper. So I went on that kind of search to dig up every newspaper article. And that's how I came up with enough detail to really put this. It's really a show. It's not a play. It's really a show that was put together and performed on February 1st at the Kiwanis Theater. That's how I started with it.
Awesome. And wow, what a great production as well. Carlos, how was your research process? I mean, you heard about John Anderson for the first time like in 2024, so there was a lot that you had to do to get this ready.
Yeah, it was similar. It was reading newspaper articles, finding things online. There were like a couple of books. One was like a law book by like I think his name's like Robert Bode. And then there was a bit of an autobiography that was done by, or at least it was edited by, I believe it's like 12 Harpies, something like that. I can't remember the actual name, but there was one book, but I mean, heavily it's been based on the Amherstburg Freedom Museum, yourself, Irene, Mary Catherine, Elise Harding Davis, who is an Order of Ontario recipient, that have really helped like authenticate some of the stuff that like I was researching. So that was kind of like how my process was.
And for sure, shout out to the amazing Patrick Broad, one of the most prolific writers about history in Windsor, Essex. We're always so grateful for his past research. Really helps with a lot of these projects. So, Sharri, why is it important for stories like that of Shelton Brooks to be presented to the public through this kind of platform? In your case, a musical stage production.
Um, well, it can be presented in a lot of different platforms, you know, but I chose this one because my inspiration, after gathering as much detail as I could through my research, my inspiration for how to present it came from my experience watching something in the United States called the Kennedy Center Honors. Are you familiar with that program? And the format of that program is that there's a host or a series of hosts that tell a little bit about the person's life and then support it with a musical piece or a dramatic piece or a piece of poetry or a theatrical piece. And it kind of floats the person's life, makes the details of his life come or her life come alive. And so I chose that format um, uh, for this purpose. And the if it wasn't for it wouldn't have been in a technical theater. I mean, everything that was portrayed in the theater was from the data that I had collected. But through the creative process, it kind of bloomed into a theater production, because as people got the material and we started casting the parts, and then we said, well, we're going to have this done live instead of through electronic means or a video or a musical clip. We're going to have somebody actually perform these pieces. Then the process grew into a theatrical piece. It wouldn't have been appropriate for the original intent, which was I wrote it for Buxton Homecoming 2024. And Michelle Robbins, who is the current curator of the National Historic Site in Buxton and the museum in Buxton, said, you know what, this is worthy of a theater. And so from then the creative, and this was very enjoyable, because then when you're collaborating with other people, it really takes a different life, you know, and it really expands the work. And I really enjoyed that creative process. That was my favorite part of the whole thing, you know, just working with the other people, hearing their voices, hearing their musicality, seeing them dance. We had the children even involved in a piece of it where they, the youth dance group in Buxton did a piece. It was wonderful. I think they got the best applause of anybody in the whole, you know, piece. But yeah, I guess that answers, you know, your question about the creative process. That's how it bloomed.
And Carlos, I mean, wow, you've had a distinguished career as a writer of many genres, but writing for the stage is new to you. This is your first original play. So, what's the learning curve been like for you as you've worked on this process, researching it, writing it, workshopping it, rehearsing, all of that?
Wow. It's been, I would probably say time management, because while I was writing this play, I was also touring. So it wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be, and I didn't realize how demanding theater was. So really, it's just been like time management has been like the hardest part, and then just making sure that like the research that I'm getting, the checking that I'm getting from the historians, and just making sure that I can take this information and also just write it in the genre that I'm trying to write it as, which is a thriller, right? So I'm this project is written as like a spy thriller, and I'm a suspense thriller writer, and it was important to me, especially with someone who has ADHD and learning challenges, to make this very engaging for youth.
And you are acting in this play as well. That's really interesting. How's that process been for you? And especially as you get closer and closer to opening night.
I've been actually getting more emotional as we're getting closer and closer to opening night. Um, I had no interest in acting last year, and Chris Rabideau, the director, he first, like, when I agreed to do the play, he's like, "Would you consider yourself acting in it?" And I was like, "Absolutely not." And then we had gone through casting, and Chris, when he looks for actors, he's looking for people who are like honest and vulnerable. And when I wrote this story, even though it's based on John Anderson, there was much of myself that I had put into it as far as like the trauma. So there's like, scenes where, John's mother is being like dragged away, and it reminded me of when I was a child, and when I had witnessed my mother being like abused and being helpless and not being able to do anything about it. And then just even like some of the abuse that he would have experienced. It just reminded me of my own personal abuse. And when I was, 18, I was exiled from my family. So I was in a place of survival, going from place to place, trying to just find a place to settle. So a lot of my own personal experiences, and even things that I would have wanted to say to people who made me feel insecure that were white, or who had expressed micro or macro aggressions towards me. There's a lot of what I wanted to say. And the benefit of being a writer is you get to kind of hide behind the page. But now as an actor, it's a lot different, because now I feel very naked, and I feel very vulnerable, even though this is John Anderson's story. And it's been hard to kind of separate myself from him, even though we are different. We've actually had a few rehearsals where I had started like crying, and I'm so happy that I have such an incredible like cast and crew, because they've been so like supportive and so understanding. And there were like certain scenes that I was like, this is really, really strong, and I think the audience is really gonna love it. But they were like, you know what, Carlos, I think for the sake of like the trauma and like the trigger for you, we're just gonna adjust it or tweak it a little bit, so that way we just have like a continued safe space for you. So as far as being an actor, I've never even dreamed of being an actor. And now that I am an actor, I feel really grateful and honored, and I can't thank everybody at ACT for believing in me enough. For you, Irene, for keeping me like in your thoughts and your heart and making this suggestion, because it just started out as like a play, and my understanding was um, the vice co-chair, Barbara Porter, she only wanted it to be like a 15-minute play. And here it is a 2-act play. And, it's at about an hour and 45 minutes. So it's just been an incredible experience just from like the beginning. I'm really growing as an artist and evolving and doing things that I never thought that I would do. I'm doing my own stunts and figuring that out. And I'm just really grateful. And I look forward to seeing what else comes from this. I'm so interested in learning more about like Black Canadian history. And there's just more projects that I want to go ahead and do. And there's more people that I want to collaborate, because I really just want to amplify these stories of these legends. Because I think that it's important that not only that they are like remembered, but that everyone is just educated on what happened here in Canada.
So, Shari, for you, what is it that you hope that members of the public, members of the audience will have taken away from witnessing that production? What do you hope that they carry with them about the life of Shelton Brooks?
I wanted to have the audience to come away with more information about Shelton Brooks, that specific person. Like I said, there are many stories to tell from the Buxton settlement, but I just wanted to dig in deeply on this one person and talk about his impact that he had, because he was internationally known. It wasn't just the United States and Canada. He was known in Europe because he traveled there with Broadway productions. He had a command performance before King George V and Queen Mary. I mean, you know, he, in his songs, I was just listening to a movie the other day where one of his songs, Some of These Days, a very famous song that he had, was playing in the background while the actors were, you know, dancing a ballroom dance around it, you know, on television. So, you know, you wouldn't key in on the music unless you were aware of him, you know, because it just sounds like pleasant music to dance to. But I said, oh, I'll be doggone, you know, he's still relevant. He's still current, you know. Yes. So I wanted them to come away with more information, to come away with a sense of pride about people from the area of African American, African Canadian or African American descent, because frankly, a lot of the people that were in the Elgin settlement were originally from the United States, you know. So, you know, I just wanted to encourage that. And you know, I hope to have some more coming out. It takes quite a bit to regurgitate and to put it into some kind of logical format for consumption by the public. It takes a lot to do that. So this is like my second major production. And I had a couple of mini productions, as you are aware of, Irene, through our conference that I think were well received too. So, you know, for some reason, I can produce it. I don't know where it comes from exactly, except my early interest in entertainment and stuff like that, and my ability to read a lot and to write. You know, that's what I've done my whole career. So, you know, I'm just using all of these things together right now.
Yeah, so we can look forward to more productions like these, I'm gathering.
I'm working on something, but you know, it takes a while for me to know if it's really going to produce.
Will we ever have opportunities to see Shelton Brooks again?
Yeah, I don't know. The I gave the I gave the piece to the museum, so if they want to redo it, it's up to them to make that decision. But I think it's something that should be preserved and redone periodically. You know, you don't have to throw it away. Don't just do it once and throw it away. I think it's something that's reproducible.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Shari. And Carlos, for you, my goodness, The Price of Freedom is premiering this week at the Capitol Theater in Windsor, starting with a daytime show for school groups on February 27th and culminating in the public performances. So I can only imagine how you're feeling as the world premiere approaches. What are you hoping that people will take away from this story about John Anderson? What do you hope they'll carry with them about John Anderson, the character, the individual himself?
That he changed our laws here in Canada. That he also changed our relationships with the Americans. His trial was just before the Civil War. And when he was declared free, like months later, we had the Civil War. So his contributions have been very significant, especially with our extradition laws. Um, at the time that he was on trial, a lot of Black Canadians were afraid that him being potentially sent back meant that they would potentially be sent back, because being free was a crime, right? So I really just hope that people will see that. I have written it to be like entertaining, but for me as an artist, it's I just go by the hiding the vegetables in the macaroni, so that people can enjoy it while also getting something good from it. So yeah.
What a metaphor. So, after it has its run here in Windsor, will there be opportunities for people in other communities to see this?
Yes, I'm actually currently working on a grant right now for the Canada Council and the Ontario Art Council. And I already have some theaters in other cities and provinces that have provided me with support letters. The plan is for us to go ahead and take this on a 10-city tour. We'll probably start the tour at the end of January of 2026, and then build off of that momentum for Black History Month. And then we'll probably have a break at maybe like the first week of March, and then we'll continue the tour in October of 2026 for Social Justice Month. But we're looking at like 10 cities. We're looking at like 10 weeks. I'm hoping that we can bring the whole cast, but if for whatever reason we have some like challenges, I have some people in some other cities that are very talented. I mean, one of the characters is Robert Sutherland, who's the first Black lawyer in North America, and he is of Jamaican descent. And I know like Jamaicans that I've known have always been very proud people. So I know a few actors that are Jamaican that would love for an opportunity to go ahead and portray such an impactful character. So I'm really excited about that. And then also, I did actually receive a grant to adapt the project into a screenplay. So that's something that I am planning on doing. And once the screenplay is done, I'm going to write another grant so that I can adapt it into a feature film. And hopefully, I can have it with a big streaming platform. I've already kind of talked to a couple producers about the idea, and they have expressed some interest. So we'll see. My thing is, if people are not able to go ahead and see the play for whatever reason, I mean, our school show is already sold out. We have hundreds on a waiting list, and we're trying to see if we can get them in for the Thursday night Act Gives Back show, which is like invite only. But for me, like I'm working on a book for the project as well. With there's a publisher that I'm talking to that has expressed interest, but I decided to put a hold on writing the sample chapters that they had requested. But for me, I want this story to be available to as many people as possible, and I want to keep it as engaging in as many mediums as possible. So whether that's literature, or whether that's like theater, or whether it's film, I want to go ahead and do my part to amplify this man's story and his contributions to Canadian history.
Wonderful. Well, we've reached the part of this broadcast where we can invite audience members to ask questions. So you're welcome, if you wish, to enter questions in the chat, which I will read out loud. Or you can raise your hand if you'd like to be recognized and ask a live question. We'll give you a moment to think about that. I do want to thank very much Carlos Anthony and Sharri Rolland Phillips for joining us. The kind of work that you're doing is very, very challenging. It's relatively easy to actually just research history and write a paper about it and maybe publish that or present that at a conference. To convert these kinds of stories into material that's really engaging and that makes use of different arts opportunities and different platforms like this is a more challenging task. So you're both to be commended for taking that on. Do we have any questions from the audience today? All right. I think that we are all set then. I want to thank you both for joining us. And please remember, if you are watching this week, The Price of Freedom is premiering at the end of February through March 2nd at the Capitol Theater in Windsor. And then hopefully we'll see it in some other communities later on as well. And on behalf of the Amherstburg Freedom Museum celebrating our 50th anniversary in 2025, I want to invite everyone to stay abreast of all of our 50th anniversary events and activities. You can follow us on social media or check us out at amherstburgfreedom.org. Thanks, everyone, and happy Black History Month.
Thank you, Irene.
Thank you for having us, Irene.